On this Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, Xavier Tillman Sr. has been maximizing his minutes in the NBA Finals. Could a return to Memphis be in the cards? Damichael, my partner, has a new mock draft out over the commercial appeal that caught my eye. I want to dig a little deeper into his brain on that one. And we'll close out with two players who have been rising up mock draft boards. Which one would make the most sense for the Memphis Grizzlies? It's all that and more on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you. Wherever you are taking in Locked On Grizzlies, it is a wonderful time to be taking in any NBA content, but specifically, I'm biased, Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts, joined by my wonderful co-host, Damichael, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. We are so thankful to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Again, we are free and available here on Locked On Grizzlies, wherever you get podcasts, as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe over on YouTube, Apple, Amazon, Spotify. Basically, wherever you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. And Damichael, we took yesterday off in honor of Father's Day. I have three little ones who weren't going to let me get away on Father's Day to record a podcast, which is fine. That's a good thing. They wanted to spend time with their old man, which I appreciate. And I know you've got some family there in Memphis as well. So a wonderful chance for us to just kind of catch our breath. It's going to be quite the grind heading into the draft and free agency, that sort of thing. So a brief respite from our recording schedule for the Monday show. But we're back here on a Tuesday, and we got a lot to talk about, and we'll jump right in with Xavier Tillman Sr., an interesting name, in large part because I think it's almost wishful thinking, almost like the one that got away. You know who that is for you, Damichael Cole. Yeah, you've got a one that got away.
It's the other big.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the one that got away, whether it's a big man in basketball or whether it's that girl, that one summer camp that you went to and you shared ice cream and because hers fell and she looked at you a certain way and said thank you and you got
I still remember her name too.
I remember that girl too. Yeah, you know how it is. And we all have the one that got away. It seems like for some Grizzlies fans, Xavier Tillman Sr.'s current run of success, the dagger three-pointer that he hit in Game 3 against the Mavericks, for example, he's doing a lot of the same things for Boston that he did for Memphis, right? Solid, improved within the Boston scheme, but solid rotational defense, the ability to be versatile.
Did you see the video of him? I think it was before Game 3. Did you see the video where he made like 23 pointers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've talked about here on Locked On Grizzlies how he has shouted out the Memphis system defensively and how a large reason that he's able to just kind of plug and play is because a lot of the same kind of things Boston does on defense. Memphis
Joe Mazzulla did.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you. So I think that a lot of folks just kind of are longingly thinking of yesterday, so to speak. I'm not going to sing any Beatles songs because of copyright infringement, but I do think that it's interesting, the concept of bringing Xavier Tillman Sr. back. It seems like a long shot at best, extremely unlikely, but there's always a chance, I suppose. What would that look like for you? Are you even interested in a hypothetical Xavier Tillman Sr. return on the back of an impressive NBA final showing?
Well, the first question is, would they even want him back? And I say that because, from the player standpoint, 100%, I think the players will welcome him back. I've talked about it in the past how I saw Jaren Jackson Jr., in the immediate hours, days, after, he spent so much time collegiately, NBA playing with Xavier Tillman Sr., and he couldn't look to his right anymore. And that locker didn't have Xavier Tillman Sr.'s name on it anymore. And, he even talked about, balancing the business part of it to the, the friendships that you build and things like that. So when Xavier Tillman Sr. was traded, in the locker room, it was kind of a gut punch a little bit. He's a guy who has been here a while and spent a lot of time around these guys. And, he's a voice, as we've seen in the finals with the Celtics. And I'm going to get to more of this in the second year. Xavier Tillman is very good with media, speaks his mind, and he's very good, in terms of, if you want to get into the X's and O's of what's going on. Now, he's super honest. So sometimes there have been a couple things that he said where I think on the Grizzlies side of things, not necessarily in, the team, but I know from the fan base perspective, a couple things he said probably kind of rubbed people the wrong way. Joe, you'll remember the first comment, about how he basically was talking about how Boston was a very mature basketball team, right?
Yeah.
He said it was different, a little different from his previous situation, but he didn't say that the Grizzlies were immature. He just said the Grizzlies were young, turned up, vibrant, and Boston was more business-like, which makes perfect sense to me. But of course, people are going to take it the wrong way. And then there was the other one that was more recent. And me personally, I side-eyed this one a little bit because he said that I think he was talking about Joe Mazzulla. He was just basically saying that how Joe Mazzulla really cares about, the personal side. It's not just all basketball with him. And he basically said, with some of his previous basketball coaches, it wasn't that way. And I'm not privy to, those private conversations with Taylor Jenkins and things like that. But when we talk to Taylor Jenkins, he seems very conscious of what is going on with these guys on a personal standpoint. But maybe, when they're in practice and whatnot, none of that stuff matters. But that was Xavier Tillman Sr.'s perspective. All that being said, would you want him back? And that given some of those things that have been said. Now, get into the basketball. That's the narrative stuff. Let's get to the basketball. I don't like the idea. I like Xavier Tillman Sr. for what he does. I think Boston, from what I've listened, talking to people out of Boston, it seems like Boston is going to be interested in the idea of bringing him back. And if Boston wants to bring him back, just stay there. Simple. I think it took a while, for him to move the family and everything out here, to Boston and whatnot. But when they came, now they're pretty much starting to settle in and whatnot. Just stay out there in Boston. And I think that's a better situation for him, for the player he wants to be. Whereas in Memphis, they're going in a different direction. The undersized bigs and, things like that. It's a different situation. Plus, we saw Xavier Tillman, for a while here, and we know his limitations very well. And some of those limitations are the same things that me and you have talked about a lot as things that the Grizzlies want to harp up on going into this offseason.
For me, it's pretty simple. The Grizzlies already have an undersized big in Brandon Clark. And undersized bigs have a place in the NBA, all right? Like Draymond Green kind of brought that back a little bit. And there's others too. Al Horford, you could argue. Xavier Tillman Sr.'s current teammate.
A baby Al Horford didn't make it in a way.
I think you're onto something. And that might be one of the reasons that Boston likes him. Maybe they think over the next season or two, they can develop his skill set and he can be maybe not as good as Al Horford, because Al Horford, when he was at his prime, we have to remember, was an all-star caliber player. So maybe not as good as Horford, but a poor man's Horford is still a pretty solid rotation player in the NBA. And maybe that's what X's ceiling could potentially be. The Memphis Grizzlies already have an undersized big, and Clark is that vertical threat in the lob game that we've talked about a lot here on the show. Clark has that defensive versatility. He's just a more explosive athlete. Yeah. I think that, if I'm putting a ball in their hands and I'm asking each of them to shoot a three, I'm trusting X more than I'm trusting Clark to make that shot if my life depends on it. Memphis isn't interested in that particular role from their undersized big man. At least that's what their roster moves say. That's what they're positioning in terms of what they plan on doing in the offseason, at least the way that it looks. They made their choice. It's Brandon Clark. It's not Xavier Tillman Sr. So as fun as it is to kind of dream, I'm not sure that it makes sense for Memphis anymore.
Yeah, if it happens, I won't, come on here and lash out like that. Like the ideal role for Xavier Tillman Sr., I think, as we've seen in Boston and as we saw for a certain amount of time in Memphis, is a third big. He's a good third big. But when you put him in that increased role where he's probably your immediate backup center, or he's even starting like we saw in the playoffs last season for the Grizzlies, then you get to okay, now his limitations are going to be shown. He's good for situational things. I think the perfect example of that is when the Grizzlies had no answer for Karl-Anthony Towns. I keep going back to this, right? You remember that, Joe? That playoff series, he's playing Steven Adams off the court. And, Steven Adams' on-off numbers were just horrific. And Brandon Clark was too small. Brandon Clark was mobile enough, but he was too small to bang with Karl Anthony Towns. And then you got the perfect combination of those things in X. You got the guy who's super nimble. I mean, you watched him in the NBA Finals. When he gets isolated against Luka, he kind of held his own. And then on top of that, you get the power. You get the guy who he can hold his own when Embiid, shoves a shoulder into his chest and whatnot. So he's a good third big, in my opinion. Very limited offensively, but he's the guy who can. Okay, if you got a wiry big who's more of the athlete like a Brandon Clark, and you got your Steven Adams type big strong guy who's probably a little slower on the feet. Xavier Tillman is kind of a nice mix and match in between those things.
Yeah, I think so too. I like X. I think he's an NBA player. I just don't think he's a Memphis Grizzly anymore. And that's okay, right? You tip your cap, you say thank you for your service, and you move right on along. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. It sounds like Damichael and I are both on the same page, anti-X return. I agree with Damichael that I wouldn't go on a rant on Locked On Grizzlies if they brought Tillman back, but I also don't think he fits with the Grizzlies anymore. Let us know if you agree or disagree in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about Damichael's latest mock draft over at the Commercial Appeal. He made a surprising pick at number 9 overall, and I want to kind of get his feeling, his vibe for why he went the way he did. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at FanDuel. I don't know if you know this or not, Damichael, but it's a pretty hot time, not just in America, but in sports overall. Obviously, the NBA Finals, baseball, so much going on. You can bet it all, even once the finals conclude, over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You heard me correctly. $200 that you can use to bet everything from Major League Baseball's home run derby winner to any other WNBA type of award, all sorts of different stuff over at FanDuel. Make sure you're checking it out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. Again, $200 on bonus bets or in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Add a big win to your summer bucket list with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's a tremendous deal. Make sure you're going and checking it out. When we come back on Locked On Grizzlies, Stephon Castle? Really, Damichael? Talk about it next. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole, the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. We poo-pooed the idea of Xavier Tillman Sr. That's the technical term, poo-pooed. We poo-pooed that idea earlier in the show.
Something you say to your toddler kid.
Yeah, I did spend too much time with them. That's further evidence of why I needed the day off. Imagine how bad it would have been for the Monday show. But on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, you put out an article on Monday about another mock draft that you did. And I always read Damichael's stuff. If you don't, what are you doing? I think I literally subscribe to the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis now solely for Damichael's work. At Damichael C, you get all the great access through subscription to the Commercial Appeal, all that great stuff. I subscribe, and I read your article, and I was taken aback. I was aghast, if I'm being honest. You at number 9, and again, I'll let you explain because you wrote the article. At number 9, you went Stephon Castle. And on one hand, I love it because what have I been saying all along? Are we trying to win a championship or not?
Yeah.
And whoever they pick needs to be able to play next to Ja Morant. You checked both of those boxes. Stephon Castle can come in and help a team that is trying to contend right now because of his length, because of his handle, his ability to play the 2-guard and the point. He makes all the sense in the world because of his size and his length. He can easily play next to Ja Morant. Check. But he has been, or at least rumors have come out, and maybe that is the key here, that he is only interested in being a lead guard, going and working out at places and being a part of places where he can be that lead point guard, which obviously is not going to happen in Memphis. So talk me through your thought process here, partner. Was it a case of best player available? Because the way your board shook out, it made sense for him to be your pick in that way. But at the same time, maybe it's more of a philosophical question. Do you call a player on their bluff in that situation and say, oh, really? You're not going to be the number 9 pick and go to a team that's going to try to contend for the Western Conference Finals? You're going to make that big of a stink? Let's see how it goes for you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care about all these positional demands and things like that. You get to the NBA, you get around some vets and stuff, and they set you straight, and life goes on. Like, of course, there's a couple examples of guys that are still gonna, have their situations. I think, was Vince Carter and T Mac. That's probably like one prominent example that comes to mind. But still, like, it happens. Whatever. Now, the idea of Stephon Castle. So it comes from this. At the end of the day, if you ask me what the Grizzlies' top 3 needs are, in whatever the order may be, I'll say, there's 3 things that appeal to me. They need a rim protecting big man who's physical and can rebound the basketball and set screens at a high level. That's on the list. I've said it 150,000 times. Shooting, high level shooters. That's on the list. The third one, I haven't talked about it as much, but a defensive minded wing. David Roddy was supposed to be that. They put him in a lot of situations. Didn't really work out that way. Jake LaRavia, you can still say the jury's out there, but we haven't seen him be that kind of like that, or even be put into positions. I think Gigi Jackson's getting more of those opportunities than Jake. Vince Williams is getting more of those opportunities. And Vince Williams, so far, if you look at the advanced numbers of those 3 players, he's looked the best in that situation. But they still need more. They still need more defensive-minded wings, because it's a wing league. Because in order to compete for championships, you're gonna have to beat teams that got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, on them. You're gonna have to beat teams that got Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. You're gonna have to beat teams that got Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. You're gonna have to beat teams that got Paul George and Kawhi. Now, you get the point. You're gonna need multiple strong defensive-minded wings. So the simplest form is let's start with Dalton Connect, because Donovan Clingan clearly is off the board at this point. I had him going 5 to the Pistons. There's some people around there that kind of starting to think that with Trajan Langdon taking over in the front office, he's going to have his whole own outlook on this current Pistons roster, which makes certain guys expendable, potentially Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren has progressed really well. He's somebody me and you will talk about in the coming weeks a little bit more. But there are some defensive concerns there from the people I talked to out in Detroit about how well he can progress defensively, which leads to the idea of them drafting Donovan Clingan. Then with the Charlotte Hornets in this draft, I had them going with Dalton Connect at 6. It's probably one of the highest mocks you've seen Dalton Connect at.
I was going to say that is the highest I've seen Connect go.
Yeah, but he is a riser right now from everyone that I've talked to. And I still keep an ear on the ground out there in Knoxville a little bit. And the people that I talk to, it sounds like he is a guy who, it's still extremely, the Grizzlies can very well probably be in position to get him at 9. But the idea that he could go before 9 is very realistic. This is not a guy you just, he'll be there at 9 when we get him. We just got to decide if we want him or not. That's not the case here. I think there's a very realistic chance. And Charlotte makes a lot of sense because you got Brandon Miller. You got who can play the 2, who can play the 3. You got LaMelo Ball. And that next spot alongside of those guys is kind of up for grabs right now. And he is a guy as a knockdown shooter playing alongside 2 guys who can create really well. Makes a lot of sense there. So then you go to, shooters are off the board. Reed Shepherd, Dalton Connect. Your bigs are off the board. Alex Sarr and Clingan. And if you're selecting at 9, this is no trade backs or anything like that. Stephon Castle makes a lot of sense to me, Joe. He is a very strong defender. If you look at his game right now, defensively is where he has he kind of has made his biggest imprint. This is the reason he's right now getting top 10 buzz. Offensively, we know the shot creating ability. It's the reason when he came out of high school, he was a 5-star combo guard. He wasn't a point guard. He wasn't listed as a shooting guard. He was listed as a combo guard. You've talked about his admirations to continue to play the point. And I say, who cares? If the Grizzlies will sit him down in the meeting and they'll tell him exactly what they've told me and several other people over the years under Taylor Jenkins. Positions 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much interchangeable in the Grizzlies offense. That's why when Desmond Bane, after his rookie year, they sent him down to the Summer League and they made him a ball handler. They did it the same thing with Zaire Williams. As the regular season went on and all these guys got hurt, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams, all these players were getting thrown into primary ball handling roles because at the end of the day, secondary ball handlers on the Grizzlies will get opportunities to average 4 or 5 assists a game like we've seen Desmond Bane do.
I think you're onto something. And I want to stress, I was taken aback by the fact that again, there have been numerous reports suggesting that he only wanted to be a lead guard. By your board, the way that it shook out, again, I don't want to speak for you. I think Donovan Clingan is your plan A, is what it sounds like to me.
For sure.
And then Connect is your plan B.
Yep.
According to your board, both of those guys are gone. So
Yep.
if your plan C is Stephon Castle, you can do a heck of a lot worse than that. I think that there's a layer to this that you could also potentially trade the rights to Castle. If he is the best player on your board and there's somebody further down the list that really likes Castle and wanted him to be their lead guard, you could trade that later on if you wanted to. But you're exactly right. One of my biggest takeaways from this NBA Finals is the fact that the Celtics have a Jaylen Brown, a Jason Tatum, a Drew Holiday, a Derek White, numerous wings that can defend a guy like a Luka Doncic, a guy like a Kyrie Irving. I think we've talked about before, it's like a pitcher having different pitches, right? You set up somebody with a fastball and then you throw the changeup. You set up somebody with a Derek White and then you put Jaylen Brown on them and completely throw off however they were getting used to being defended that game. Building up your roster that way makes a lot of sense to me. And they have some of those pieces, a Marcus Smart, a Vince Williams Jr. Adding to that, especially a bigger guard, wing, combo guard, like a Castle makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm not as against this idea as maybe others might think.
It goes to your point, Joe, about the championship mentality.
Oh, he's a championship winning player, I think. Yeah, I agree with that.
And what stood out about the Boston Celtics, the fact that they got Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, all plus defenders. You look at, if the Grizzlies get closer to that model, adding another wing, defensive-minded wing, you can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong. Let us know what you think in the comments if you agree. Again, I want to stress, according to Damichael's board, Connect was gone, Clingan was gone, like he said earlier. It was pretty clearly the best player available was Castle. I support the pick. Let us know if you would be cool with Castle coming to Memphis in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll close out this episode of the show, talk about two players that would also be on the board, theoretically, in this situation. They're risers, like Dalton Connect may be right now as well. What do we think of a Cody Williams versus Devin Carter situation if Memphis has to deal with it? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors is phenomenal because of their passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your car alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your car every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die whip alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to customers in the United States. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we close out the show talking about two risers towards the end of the NBA draft lottery. Are you a Devin Carter guy or a Cody Williams guy? Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He is the award-winning Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Make sure you're following him on X at Damichael C. If you don't already do so, follow me at Joe Mullinax. It's been a great show. Again, the technical term poo-pooing on the idea of Xavier Tillman coming back to Memphis. Not poo-pooing on the Stephon Castle idea, which maybe will surprise some folks. But we close out this episode, Damichael, talking about two players that are moving up draft boards in my weekly, roundup of updated mock drafts, Cody Williams and Devin Carter. Now, Cody Williams maybe shouldn't surprise us. I get strong Zaire Williams vibes from Cody Williams. Which maybe I'm killing the lead here a little bit in terms of which way I'm going to go.
Oh, you killed the lead, all right.
and this is a guy who has talent, though, right? He's a talented young player. He did some good things there in Colorado. Had some offensive success in particular, and he's young, right? He's 19 and a half years old. He was born in 2004, which makes me feel super old. But this is a guy who has potential, has the size, a bigger wing, 7'1" wingspan. Mm-hmm. Currently mocked, according to Tankathon, to Oklahoma City at 12. but I think it was over at ESPN or somewhere. I wish I could give the proper credit. I apologize. Somebody had him going number 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so I could see that being a fit. Another one, and we've talked about this young man before, Devin Carter out of Providence, a little bit older, right? 22 years old coming out of the draft. I know there's Grizzlies connections there. 6'3.5", so he's got about a 6'9" wingspan. This is a guy who is a combo guard, more so than Williams. Williams would be more of a true forward on the perimeter. The advanced numbers scream Devin Carter. I think that one of the main knocks against him is his age, which, as I've talked about, and I know you and I are on the same page with this, I don't care. Are you trying to win a championship or not? Yep. So if it came down to this, if Memphis, let's say Stephon Castle's off the board somehow at 9, and it's Carter or Williams, to me, I'm running to if those are the two options, I'm running to the podium taking Devin Carter, because while Cody Williams might be good 2 or 3 years from now, like Tankathon has him going to Oklahoma City, that would make a lot of sense because the Thunder don't necessarily need him to be a dude right now. They're set up for long-term success. The Grizzlies need somebody that can come in and be a contributor right away. Devin Carter checks a lot of your boxes, right? He is that ball handler. He can do those things. He can shoot the three at a decent clip. He might be the most well-rounded, ready-to-go player in this draft.
Yeah, he's one of them for sure. And you mentioned the Grizzlies connection, and son of assistant coach Anthony Carter. And if you're familiar with the name Anthony Carter around here, if you've been listening to Locked On Grizzlies, the players have been singing his praises in just the 1 year that he's been.
G.G. Jackson in particular.
Yeah, I mean, G.G. Jackson basically said he had the best shooting year of his basketball life, and Anthony Carter was heavy influence in that. Helping him clean up his mechanics, offensively as a shooter and things like that. So Anthony Carter, his son, I mean, you can tell. In a way, he's one of those players. Like you mentioned the advanced stats and things like that. Like certain players, from an intangible standpoint, you can tell that they belong in the position that they're in. And Devin Carter is one of those players. But Joe Mullinax.
Uh-oh.
Joe Mullinax.
Upset.
I'm not. Those bloodlines are good, but the bloodlines of Jalen Williams and Cody Williams, I don't know if I'm ready to bet against those. I get your Zaire Williams stuff. I get it. 6'8", 6'9", 4, kind of raw. 1 year college basketball. But Joe, Zaire Williams didn't shoot over 40% from three-pointer in college. Zaire Williams didn't shoot that well in three-pointers in high school, which one of the main things, Zaire Williams has never been considered a really good three-point shooter. But the Grizzlies have him shooting a bunch of them. Well, guess what? Cody Williams could be that. And there are some other rawness parts of this game. He has to develop more as a secondary playmaker that Devin Carter has already become and things like that. But what if I say, okay, that's fine. You give me a 6'8" guy, 7'1" wingspan. Now we're talking about some real, a guy who can fit right into the scheme of what the Grizzlies like to do defensively, playing the passing lanes. Being active defensively, guarding multiple positions, being able to switch 1, 2, 3, 4 up and down the line. Cody Williams can do all of that. He fits, what the Grizzlies want to do more defensively than offensively. And offensively, he's super talented. I think over the time, as you mentioned, he's sort of a raw prospect. And I think the main thing that stands out is he can shoot the basketball right now. So guess what? You go sit in the corner. You don't have to do too much. We're not going to ask you to read, pick and rolls on offense and things like that. Devin Carter can do a little bit more of that. But I'm buying, sometimes you swing for the prospect, the guy that has the tantalizing, the toolsy upside stuff, and you miss. Zaire may have been a miss in that regard, but guess what? G.G. Jackson wasn't. And Cody Williams, when I look at him, Joe, I'm telling you, 6'8", 6'9". He's rising because of the fact that his year in Colorado did not end, as well as he played earlier in the season. He got to the point where, he wasn't closing games and, his minutes had drastically decreased and things like that. But overall, I'm buying the upside here because just like you said, Oklahoma doesn't really need him to play right now. The Grizzlies wouldn't need him to play technically at the beginning of the season with all the wings that they have. But I'm buying the upside of this guy being a factor eventually.
he can shoot the ball, but he has a negative assist to turnover ratio, literally negative.
You're not going to ask him to be a playmaker.
Terrible rebounder on a team that if Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to play the 5 for you a considerable amount, you need your wings to be able to rebound. And he was one of the worst rebounders in the country, considering where he was playing and what was being asked of him. I don't know. It makes me nervous. I think that there's a solid debate here. His offensive skill is undeniable. I'm not going to debate that. He very clearly could help that half-court offense thing.
He played with a couple really good rebounders at Colorado as well. Namely, another guy who's probably going to be a first-round pick as well. So.
No, that's true. So again, let us know in the comments. Where are you? I'm Team Carter in this debate. Sounds like Damichael's Team Williams.
I'm buying the upside.
He's buying upside. I'm trying to win a championship this year. That's what I'm trying to do.
I'm trying to build a dynasty.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let us know in the comments whose side you're on. I have a feeling Damichael's going to win this one, but that's okay. He made a solid argument, but I digress. Next time that we're here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll take a closer look at the NBA Finals, not just Xavier Tillman, but all that's transpiring there. We'll talk a little bit about the draft, obviously upcoming, taking a look at where the Grizzlies could get value, not just in the first round, but the second round, maybe developing a game plan to Michael. Like if the Grizzlies went with a big at 9 overall, what would they do in the second round? If they go with a Stephon Castle at 9 overall, what do they do in the second round? Maybe we can develop kind of a draft game plan for the Grizzlies coming up.
Yeah, I got a story that's going to come out later this morning on exactly that topic.
There you go.
And so there are some names. I'm sure, Joe, before we record, you'll see some of the names on there, and we'll discuss because you'll see a bunch of second round options, and I think for all the lackluster that the first round is getting, there are some really good depth options in this draft class.
Well, like we've talked about before, if you're looking for a LeBron James superstar, I don't know that this draft has that. If you're looking for solid role players, I think this draft has a ton of them. And that's exactly what Memphis is looking for. So this makes total sense that is a reason that they reportedly like this draft. If you don't need a superstar like Memphis does not, then there's lots of value to be had, I think. And we'll talk more about that on our next episode of the show. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA and Locked On Sports Today, the first of its kind streaming 24/7 channel over on YouTube. You can also check it out over on Amazon Fire on the free TV channels app. If you're tired of hearing yelling from Fox Sports and ESPN, you can get great content and analysis, not just from shows like Locked On Grizzlies, but from all the different leagues across the Locked On Podcast Network. So again, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today. Thank you a million times over for liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Please continue to do so and continue to make Damichael and I a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, Grizzlies fans. We'll catch you back here on Wednesday on Locked On Grizzlies. See ya.